Good evening. My name is Barbara Wallace, and I'm a member of Immanuel Evangelical Lutheran Church that sits at the corner of Sauk Trail and Cicero in Richton Park. And with me this evening is Richard Stunkel, who has been a member of Immanuel for quite a few years. Good evening, Richard. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. We are going to discuss the cemetery that sits at the front of our church where we have past parishioners have been buried. On the west side of the church, we have 15 people that had been members where they're in their eternal rest. Across the street, on the west side of Cicero, sits the major part of the cemetery. And Richard is going to give you a little bit of history of that. He brought along tonight the records that were incorporated when the cemetery was started in 1912. Though it is in German, and I've not heard a German Lutheran service for some time, but it's quite interesting that you've had this all these years.
Well, the cemetery kept them in the records. They were passed down to me over the years.
Oh, okay. So it was passed down to you over the years. And the cemetery was incorporated in what year?
In 1912.
In 1912. And the first person who was interred here?
The first person was not even a member of the church. It was a family passing through to go to the west, and as they were passing through Richton Park, then two men, they were starting to debate who had the strongest oxen team, and so I don't know if they had a drag race, if they had hooked them together and see who could outpull them, but while this was happening, a 6-year-old girl sleeping in one of the wagons fell out and was killed, and so they came the extra mile here since the church had formed already, but there were no bodies buried, so they buried her. She is not in our church records because our church records only has members that are buried. If you were a member and you were buried some other place, it didn't hit the records. So, but that was the first burial on the first cemetery that we had.
Okay, I understand that a new monument will be erected here on the west side of Cicero. Will her name be included in that, even though she was not a member at the time?
We can't include a name. We don't have a name.
Oh, we don't have a name.
See, she's not even in the records. The only reason we know it's in my family's history records.
Oh, it's in the family history records.
And that's not, in the church records, it's not recorded.
It's not recorded.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, and I'll petition to say a little angel rests here.
Well, we can
do something like that.
On the monument, we can add something that there were others buried here that are not named, but we're not of knowledge who they were, but we do want to address them and respect them.
And respect them. Okay, Richard, as I said, we have this book that was part of the cemetery. Are we still going by these rules?
No, we have updated our constitution a few times, or our bylaws, I'd say at least four times in the history of this church.
Okay, but this was the basis.
That was
this is
the
what
first
started it. Okay. Also, I've noted in the summary that the graves were very inexpensive early on. Can you give us a little bit of record about that, how much they were?
The graves on the east side of the church, west of Cicero, those graves were all given to the members free. They didn't have to pay for them. What we considered would be cheap, they had one person who would dig the grave and then he would cover it when they were done with the funeral. And for an adult, he would receive $1, and for a child, 75 cents.
The prices have really gone up since that time.
And this was done by hand. There were no backhoes at that time.
There were no backhoes. Oh, okay. So in the beginning, I know that the graves were $22. $22?
They what?
They were $22. The cost of a grave.
The 22, that was on the new cemetery on the east side. That's when we start charging for a lot. We sold plots. We didn't say, well, sell one grave. We sold a family plot, and they started out at $22 for 4 graves, up to $35 for 6 grave plot.
Oh, okay. And I also note that that assessment for maintenance, for
every year they would take whatever charges, expenses there were, and then they would take the number of people that had plots there, and then they would divide it, and every year you had to pay your maintenance fee. But then back in, I think in the 1970s, the directors at that time decided it was too much trouble, so they decided to sell endowments, and that was supposed to be perpetual care then.
Oh, so it didn't start until the 1970s?
The endowments, yeah.
The endowments, okay. So are people still paying for that now?
Well, we included, when we sell a plot, we include it in the price.
Okay.
Right now we're charging, for members, we're charging $2,000 for a 4-grave plot, which can be made into a 5-grave if they so desire, by putting the vaults closer.
Putting them closer together.
Back in the early days when they dug them by hand, they left 1 foot between every grave, because when you dug by hand, there was too much chance of caving in. So they didn't want to disturb the one that had departed before, so they left a foot between.
Okay, and so now you say that there's less space. Is that head and side, head, foot, and then the sides? Are we burying closer now?
Well, we can. I mean, it's up to the family.
Okay.
If they want to, if they only have 4 people and want to have them separated, they can. And if they have a bigger family and they want 5 or 6, whichever they purchase, there's different sizes. They can add 1 grave if they want to do them closer.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, in the payments for the endowment, is there enough money in that fund? And
No, well, right at the present time, we're not destitute, but no, see, by the endowments being $50 for a 4-grave lot, and $75 for a 5, and $100 for a 6-grave lot. At that time, when interest rates were, when prices were cheap and interest was 3, 4, 5%, it was okay. Now interest is 1%, and to open a grave and close it, right now we're cheap and we're paying $700.
oh, is that all? Only $700 to open and
Yeah,
close?
that to open and close. But that's cheap. If we would be 10 miles north, say Alsip or someplace, we'd be talking 2,000.
Easily,
Well, probably.
2,000.
I have never checked it, but I know, see, it's not unionized here, and up north it would be unionized.
Okay. So are we still opening and closing with a shovel? Or I heard you say backhoe, but we now have a mechanical device, which is a backhoe.
we have a person from New Lenox that he's in that business. He does 22 cemeteries, and that's his career, and he's on call. Whenever we have a grave, we call him, and he comes out and opens it, and then after the funeral, he comes back and covers it.
And closes it again. Are there any plots available now for members?
Yes, there's plots available. If we wanted to fill the east side of Cicero, we could come up with at least 100 plots. There's enough
room.
open ground there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But we're not advertising, because just to sell plots and having no income, it doesn't really help us.
Right.
It increases our maintenance costs.
Okay. And the maintenance cost per month?
It varies. We have a company hired to cut. They do it for $100 a cutting. And then we have one company that sprays chemicals for the weeds. And well, then we have fence repair and driveway repair, tree replacement. It varies. You know, one year you can get by on 4,000 or 5,000, and next year, you know, you could be at 15.
Okay. I've seen the fence go down quite a bit. Is there some way that we can prevent, other than the wrought iron fence that's there, from those cars going into the cemetery?
The only thing they could do is to put up a steel barrier guardrails, and I don't think the town, Richton Park, well, Sauk Trails County, Cicero State, I don't think they're willing to do that. But that would be the only thing you could do.
Oh, and I don't think I'd like that because they would be very unattractive.
Right.
The fence there is.
And there isn't much room there between the sidewalk and the curb of the Cicero Avenue.
Okay, okay. Now, the trustee board or the directors for the cemetery, are they here at Immanuel?
Right now they are, but I mean, when we make up our new director and our new bylaws, we're going to have to put something in there for how the chain of command would go, because at some point, I mean, right now, there's not that many members at Immanuel that really have plots there that are interested. So we are going to pick them from Immanuel in the start, but when that runs out, we have to have a backup plan, and we will have it. We haven't finalized it yet, but there will be a backup plan to keep we're going to try and keep it in the families and in the relatives as much as possible, to keep either the government out or the state out or anybody. We're going to try.
I'm going to try, okay. A member now, may they buy a plot then? If you say that there are at least 100
Right.
plots available, so how would one go about doing that?
Well, you just approach one of the directors and say you want to purchase one, and I'm the treasurer right now. They see me. Any member could buy one without a problem. If you're a non-member, then we do ask that you are Christian.
That you are Christian?
Christian, yeah.
They just have to declare that. Richard, I know that you talked about the first person being buried in Immanuel's cemetery, but could you go back and give us a little bit of history and tell us how wakes, funerals, visitation have changed over the years, and give us a little history on Immanuel Cemetery.
Okay, the wakes and funerals changed. When I was small, in my teens and even younger, the wakes were held in the house. My grandparents were both waked in my house, and in about 1950, it changed that they would go to the funeral parlor with them, and then there would be no more wakes in the house. But when they did have the wakes in the house, the visitation would be the night before, and people would come, pay their respects, and leave. And then the next day, about 1 o'clock, the pastor would come, and all the relatives came to the house. They would have a small service in the dining room or living room, and after the service, then everybody, including the hearse, casket, and all, would depart for the church, and then they would have the regular funeral in the church like we have today yet. But some of them are starting to have funerals with the wake in the back of church just the day of the funeral.
Okay.
But go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you were talking about the wakes. Why did we wake in the house, or was that before? Why did we wake in the house? I'll just say, why did we do that? What was the purpose of that?
The story, it's not a story, but what I've been told is that back in the 1800s, I mean, doctors were few and far in between, and they didn't have the knowledge, and they were afraid people could be in a coma or something, so they would put the body, prepare it for burial, put it in the casket, and bring it in the house, and people would stay up all night watching for movement. If there was movement or something, I mean, I don't know that it ever happened, but that was the reason for wakes. That's what started it all. And this was in the 1894. I might mention on the west side, there's a big stone on the monument on the cemetery, the Stunkel stone. That happened on Christmas Eve. The family at Stunkel's Crossing went to bed, and by morning, one or two were getting up and groggy, and it so happened that the heater in the parlor, as we called it at that time, something clogged the chimney, and it was carbon monoxide, and that in the end, 4 people were dead over Christmas Day.
Over Christmas Day.
And they are all buried by that monument. That is one of the points of interest on the cemetery.
And tragedy that happened. Okay. And you were talking about going from the house to a funeral home now that the funeral homes are preparing the bodies, and that sometimes we still wake for a day or two at the funeral home, and now it seems that the custom is to also bring the remains into the church and hold a wake. Why did we start doing that?
It gives people that weren't available or elderly people at night not a chance to get to the funeral home. It gives them a chance to do it in the daytime. I think that's why we do it an hour or two before the funeral starts.
Before the funeral starts.
That's my belief. I mean, I can't say for sure, but that's the way I take it.
Okay, and the caskets are at the back of the church, and then once the service starts, then what? What happens then?
They bring the casket to the front.
They bring the casket to the front.
The casket is in the front during the service.
They close it, they drape it.
Now, when I was, even my father died in 1970, after the church service, before the cemetery, the casket was still open and everybody paid their respects till the family was the last one to pay their respects, and then they would close the casket.
But now we're closing the casket, draping it, and sometimes we do not open it again.
We don't open. Some people are even going to a closed casket in the rear of the church. A lot of people like to say their goodbyes in private, and if they do it in church, it's in public. So I've seen it where the casket isn't even opened in the back of church.
But there is no law or tradition that it must be that way.
No, you don't even have to bring the body to church. I mean, you can go from the funeral home to the cemetery too if you want to.
Because there is no law that says we have to have a service.
No.
But it is very nice to have a service and have people in the hymns. I believe that people get a lot out of that. I don't know if I would like to go right from the funeral home to the cemetery, without a service of some kind.
I think it's probably, you'll find that more in families that aren't churched.
That aren't churched.
Right. Then where would they go if they weren't a member any place, so they just consider the chapel the church.
Yes, okay.
The pastor would go there and he would have a service and everything.
Would have a service there as opposed to in the church. But I think I'm easy or correct in saying that we believe as Lutherans that a service should be held. It's our tradition.
That's our tradition.
It's our tradition.
There is no, I use the term loosely, law that says you have to do it that way. I mean, everybody is their own, they can do what they want. I mean, it's theirs. And a lot of problems we're getting, not problems, but that we were getting cremations and there's no body anymore. So a lot of that's coming into there. I'd say, from when I talked to the funeral directors, I'd say probably 20-30% are cremations already.
Okay, so you bring up another point. If our members were to decide that they would like cremation, is there a place in the cemetery to put those remains? Or what would we do?
What we're doing as of now, there's a spot there for a casket. If you want to be cremated, you consume the entire spot for the cremains.
Okay.
But see, the cremains are in an urn with it's like an urn and vault combination, and then it's very small, but it would be too hard if you could put, in the place of a casket, you could probably put 20, 30, 40
of those.
Cremations. And how would you identify them? People like to go and pick the
yes.
spot and lay flowers or plant flowers or whatever. So
Or
we
say
just
prayers.
take the center, or where, if they want it at the headstone, we put it where they want it. But you utilize the entire grave.
For use line, okay. And we've done a very good job, I believe, with the cemetery. It looks so pretty over there. Makes you want to walk through. And the times that I've been there, I know that we are in a unique position in that once a funeral is held here in the church, I've noticed that the funeral directors have to go out and stop the traffic so that people can walk across the street to the cemetery. And I believe that, from what I've seen, members enjoy that, to be that close to the family and to the person who is deceased. I think it gives us a calmness in our saying goodbye to that individual.
Yeah, I think it works out fine. We'd like to have the police do it, but the police are not very accommodating to stop traffic for us.
Okay.
So that's why sometimes we have to do it. But it does show respect that everybody stops and lets the funeral procession go, and that's been, in fact, we even had the divider broken when they widened Cicero to do that, so we
Especially
could cross.
for that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to know. I didn't know we had to pay for that, to have that breakage. But as I said, I like the idea of following
Right.
the casket and the family and the friends as to say goodbye and to know that they are interred there,
Yeah.
and that I can go back again
Right, yeah, no.
and visit.
It's a nice custom, and death is never nice, but you want to do the best you know how.
That's right. Praise the Lord. Richard, this has been very informative. I thank you very much for sharing your knowledge of Immanuel and the cemetery. So thank you so very much for coming in this evening and having this talk. I've truly enjoyed it. Thank you again.
I enjoyed it, and anytime I enjoy doing it, so there's no problem there.
There's no problem with that. Okay, so we may see you again.
Okay, yeah,
And talking about,
we'll do it again.
We'll do it again, and talking about some other issues
Okay.
that concern us here at Immanuel Lutheran Church. Thank you very much.